entrepreneurship education should look at mindset or should it look at venture creation?
When I say mindset is also about resilience, about patience. Mindset is about making that decision to do the right thing by the right, because that is what I understand and I can align.
Did you have to relearn things when you were setting up Lumiere?
Parents today are not all deriving their sense of success and validation through their child's professional achievement alone.
Do you think entrepreneurship education is a major driver for this shift, or are there other factors at play?
Everything in entrepreneurship then can get a bad name. It is very important to have a pragmatic and a realistic approach. I had a mindset that I have nothing to lose. This is something that I want to do and I need to do for myself.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Guest in Cloud Experts and Entrepreneurs Dialogue series. GUEST stands for Global University Entrepreneurial Spirit Students Survey. It's one of the largest entrepreneurship research projects in the world, with the main research focus on students' entrepreneurial intentions and activities, including the topic of family firm succession. I'm Dr. Aparna Rao on behalf of GUEST India. And today I'm thrilled to host a conversation that dives deep into the heart of entrepreneurship in India. Before we begin, let me set the stage by introducing you to the platform behind that conversation. Guest India Cloud, an initiative of Guest India, is created as a dedicated knowledge hub to fuel entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial spirit among students across the country. There are four pillars. The first is insights, which are blogs unpacking trends. Then there are perspectives, where we are looking at expert opinions. And this interview is part of the perspectives section. Stories, where we capture student journeys, and cases, where we talk about real world startup experiences. In Guess India Experts and Entrepreneurs Dialogue series, we bring you conversations with leaders, thinkers, change makers, and entrepreneurs who are shaping the future of entrepreneurship in India. Their experiences and insights are here to inform and inspire our next generation of innovators. And in this inaugural edition of the Dialogue series, we unpack the data, decode trends, and dive into what it truly takes to nurture student entrepreneurs. From shifting mindsets to institutional missions, this is where insights meet impact. Let's get started. My pleasure today to welcome a close friend and our guest today, Deepa Soman, founder of Lumiere Business Solutions Private Limited, a pioneering social enterprise in Mumbai. With an economics degree from St. Xavier's and a business management degree from SB Jain Institute of Management and Research, Deepa began her career as a management trainee at Hindustan Lever Private Limited in 19 and in 1996 Deepa founded Lumiere Business Solutions with a mission to empower women professionals to re-enter the workforce. You can read the Lumiere story in Rashmi Bansal's book Follow Every Rainbow. Today, our interview with Deepa Soman explores themes of flexible entrepreneurship, gender roles, and systemic innovation. It aligns with Guess India Cloud's goals of linking academic insight with real world entrepreneurial narratives. Deepa, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and welcome today to this session, to this meeting. I'll dive right into the interview. So, Deepa, I have heard you, I have read you talking, and you often describe yourself as an accidental entrepreneur. How did your academic background influence your entrepreneurial journey? Or was there a clash with your entrepreneurial journey?
No, I think, thanks for asking. Aparna, what I've noticed is whatever experiences we have gleaned personally and professionally academically the subjects we study. At that point in time, they may seem, is this even making sense? But in my case, and in many other cases, I have noticed that there is a connection between what one will do, what one is good at, what one feels passionate about, and what one is meant to do to really serve. So, what we've seen as that ikigai, I've seen that come together for me in multiple times, multiple ways. I was very interested in psychology, even as a undergrad student in St. Xavier's College. I was very interested in sociology, in economics, in history, and it was very difficult at a point in time there when there was a choice between philosophy and logic, which of course was discontinued, but we had an option when I was entering my application form. And I thought I needed to learn both. So somewhere the curiosity to learn multiple subjects, the desire to go deeply into doing certain projects and do my own readings in the reference library of St. Xavier's College, do a lot of reading, borrowing books from British Council, the USIS, and our own reference library. The l- foundation that I will be a researcher was laid through not just the pursuits of paying a lot of attention in class, because I was that kind of a student. But when I say pay attention, it was also uh, wanting to double click on certain things. So I remember in 11th and 12th, when I didn't need to do what the first years and the second years and third years on psychology did, I was doing that because the subject fascinated me. And as you know, much of my work straddles both. The sociology is really the societal, the human, the connections, the teams, the groups, the families that we work with in cultural context. So therefore different cultures, because Lumiere works not just in India but in other parts of the world. So being able to understand and interpret cultures comes from that subject. And the domain of economics sort of says the bedrock, because it at least uh, it sort of brings a perspective into how the process of money exchange, what is it that is value and how are things valued, becomes very important also for entrepreneurs to say it's not about a brilliant idea, but how is it going to make commercial sense, how do we work the economics of it, and so forth. And psychology, because understanding needs, motivations, what drives people to behave in certain way, how do people make choices, how do we cognitively process this information. So uh, somewhere I think a lot of curiosity. So if an education educators, or as and today all of the media available, if we can sort of not just stay, as they say, in the shallows or just skim at the surface, uh, but we are willing to, let's say, pick a couple of things that make us go deep. Uh, those are that's really where the education, as you ask me, has helped and fueled and continues to do. Because as a lifelong learner and Lumiere as a learning organization, learning is never done. I think it's never done until one is dead and gone, because that's really the whole purpose of life. I mean, you and I talk about this. All of our experiences are nothing but for us to learn about, starting with ourselves, how to refine ourselves to become better versions of ourselves. So it is all of it coming together, which not just then, 29 years ago, but even up until now, continues to fuel this and make every day interesting in the entrepreneurial journey.
You put it so well. I wish students were listening into you today, where they would understand that even if something that they are studying today doesn't make immediate sense to them, there are dots which will get connected later. They have to work on that phase. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Deepa, did you? So you have you you're a topper in one sense. You're a topper, right? You've been academically excellent and everything. Did this mindset um, have any impact on Lumiere? or did you have to relearn things when you were setting up Lumiere, your journey?
So I think there are two aspects to it. When I say topper, it was more about making all of the efforts one can to do one's best. It may or may not translate always into marks. Like I know there were my friends who didn't study as much, or at least they did claim to study as much, but I used to really slog. So I had this mindset, Aparna, and I think I've carried it through a long part, that I never get anything easy. I have to really work for it. So this in this strong belief that to get anything, you really need to do your best and then expect the rest. I think that is what I have done, and which has continued even at Lumiere. What I have definitely needed to work hard is to inculcate this culture that no matter what, we have to, a lot of times, outcomes may not be in our hands. And there are, particularly when you have multiple parts, partners, associates, clients, the rain, things that you cannot determine. So, like the serenity prayer, what are the things that I know I can change? And I think that's really the attitude that becomes very important of driving and working towards excellence. Yes, I used to be a perfectionist. I can say definitely well until the first 15, 20 years. It did make me, uh, how shall I say, uh, perpetually unhappy. And I think that that little, that little creative discontent is very good, but I don't think you need to be unhappy. So you just need to be knowing that I want to channelize all that attention to making sure that I do my best. I have clarity about it, and I'm working in a way that is in harmony with who I am as a person. Aparna, that's very important, because if my entrepreneurial self is very different from my personal self, if I'm not able to marry the two, I will be in a tremendous state of tension and mental, physical strain. Something is not going to sit right with me, because fundamentally, and this is whether I'm doing working as an employee, I'm working in an organization, or I'm working for myself. I think or I'm working to raise a family. The fundamentals of who we are do not change. And as in the several years of doing a lot of work, mentoring, talking to people within our teams, within being a sounding board for a lot of people that have found value in talking to me at any point in time in their journey, I have seen that the moment we integrate and harmonize who we are with what we do, what we say, and things align, automatically it's like you have a force multiplier that comes in.
That's right. That's right. So, Deepa, there is a major shift in the generation today, right? Meaning
Yes.
the approach, the attitude. Let me give you some numbers. Okay,
Yes.
the Guess India report reveals a major shift in career aspirations, where 31% of students are aspiring to become entrepreneurs after 5 years. That is up, and this number is up from 40% at graduation. Do you think entrepreneurship education is a major driver for this shift, or are there other factors at play?
One of the factors, uh, there are, I think, multiple factors. One is today the vast number of opportunities that become available, as opposed to very limited tracks of career that were available some years ago, right? So the fact that you can be a solopreneur and you can make your passion into a instead of a hobby, you can actually make it a wider um, proposition that can add value, and for which you can get a commercial appreciation and you can actually have a business out of it is become a possibility. Parents today are willing to back that dream. Parents today do not are not all deriving their sense of success and validation through their child's professional achievement alone. So they are fulfilled. And I'm talking maybe of a certain class, Aparna. So because we are many Indias, we see things on a spectrum. And as we go along, we can see, and the people that we speak with, we will see a wide variety of where parental anxieties come. I think what parents want is their parents want their children to use their time wisely and at the end of it, be happy. I think that's like a fundamental requirement. They in that they sometimes try to be very over engineering certain things that the child needs to do, and maybe their own fears manifest in not giving any fear. Freedom. But asking what are some of the things that have enabled? Definitely, on the one end, it is this part which is internal. Environmentally, also, you see there are there's a lot of discourse around support, incubators, now things which are part of the ecosystem of entrepreneurship, which have also grown from
Right.
the schools, whether it's the engineering colleges, and these some have always done it. Like Milind talked about how BIT Mesra in those days, maybe 35 years ago, they also had an incubator. So maybe schools were already doing it. They'd have a lab, they had a shed, they would actually provide a seed grant in BIT Mesra for entrepreneurs that were starting. And I've actually been to the campus and seen that space, which was very, very early support. So the governmental support, and that's really where a force multiplier comes in when government gets into anything. Then you have popular media, you have shows of people who've gone, and even think something like MasterChef, when so many 15, 20 years ago, you see a MasterChef and you see someone gaining proficiency and that proficiency leading to money and fame suddenly says, oh, even this is a path. I can send my child to culinary. Oh, they can go into culinary. So it's been a organic process. Oh, theater, cinema, suddenly modeling, things which were professions. And this gradually the stigmatization and the broadening of dimensions of success have started. The external marker, the part that I'm a little afraid of, is where you have shows which like Shark Tank, which are, or you have conversations which are about an X multiplier or very early stage funding or the whole conversation about my business in the context of investment and exit. Now, those are conversations which probably are like those billboard ads which talk about these classes which had these are the 7 toppers and they all got 100%. So everybody is sending their child to that particular class to get those marks. That's for me is the equivalence of a Shark Tank. And that's the trap of saying you don't see the grunt work. You don't see that I'm not saying that they are not, what is highlighted is that one success. What we miss is that there will be 20 failures for one success or 40 failures for one success, depending upon the times that we live in, and the business cycles that will determine how well we will do existing businesses and entrepreneurs. Also, different, how distinctive is the idea. So those are reality checks because I could be very much in a bubble, believing so fiercely in what I want to do, and uh, I might end up, uh, everything in entrepreneurship then can get a bad name. Yeah, so we have to. It is very important to have a pragmatic and a realistic approach. Of course, the whole idea of entrepreneurship is resting on dreaming and the ability to envision a certain future that didn't exist before. But balancing heart with head at every juncture is very, very important from that point of view. And it will continue because individual expression, particularly in our country, was always clamped because of all these expectations. Which so the moment you kind of open that lid a bit and you let go of that steam, so much can flourish.
That's true. So, Deepa, in one sense of the term, Lumiere was futuristic because you actually carved out a space for women on family breaks. You carved out a work environment which allowed flexi work, flexi hours, work from home, and all of that, all these options. Uh, how did you take these decisions in developing the business model for Lumiere? Was it
Yeah.
challenging? It must have been challenging in those days, right?
Yeah. So, a lot of times, when you look in hindsight, you just think as an entrepreneur, you are about taking opportunities. Yeah. And you are taking that opportunity with a certain uh, level of a gradation of risk and risk appetite. Yeah. In my case, I had a mindset that I have nothing to lose. I also had a mindset, and I'll tell you where I'm coming from, a deep belief that uh, this is something that I want to do and I need to do for myself. Yeah. So when it comes from a personal experience and a personal need space, you are moved actually from belief to faith. I had faith that this is something that uh, the world needs. This is something that is a biological need for a woman and a psychological and a intellectual need. So it the need to have uh, an a professional expression path, if it's not allowed, can make this professional woman who is on an interrupted career not very good in her roles as mother because she's going to be angry, irritated, frustrated, resentful. She will go through those cycles of coming to a place of acceptance at a point in time. I also want to say that not all women have this journey and this track, but like I have experienced, there will be women professionals who experience these at different levels, at different stages, whether the first 6 months is different, up to 2 years is different, 2 to 4 years. And because the early days, it was organic because the more work I got, the more people that I needed to also add. So it didn't happen that I had an end point that I'm going to do this. But what were the enablers? There was home computing. There was a fact that people had laptops at that time. They had, home, not even laptops. The desktops had started coming to home. And the work, which is consumer, the research, which is what I focused on at that time, uh, the initial days was being able to interpret read the quantitative data from a market research report, which I did for the client, and to write research reports. Then organically, one day I got a task of saying we have, a whole library of these reports from the past. Can you create management summaries of each of these reports? Because we are now looking to have a digital structure where we want to access these reports, but we want to have summaries so people know. So it was a kind of knowledge management. So it was solutioning. So here again, I had somebody who came up and said, "Gosh, there's so much that you're doing. Maybe I can help you on the weekend and help write the report." Okay. Then I train her and say, okay, she's a business analyst. She works with the financial markets, but she understands the fundamentals of being able to analyze information, read information, summarize it. So you understand the from a systems approach, what is the fundamental skills that this person has, and how might it get translated into the task at hand, the project at hand, and what are the activities she needs to do to support me in that? Which meant I needed to be able to break it down. First of all, the right person, knowing that they will work very sincerely the way I would. And then I have from one to two people who obviously can divide that role. When I say two people because she was available on the weekend. So every time there was a need, and then there was also a word of mouth that started. I would also actively, whether I went to drop my children to school or whether I went to the gym, I was looking and listening on conversations of those mothers with small children, or what have conversations with them. Oh, were you working at a XYZ place? Okay, what is it that you're doing now? How much time do you feel sometimes that you want to work? So I was also researching to understand whether they had a need or a desire and say, okay, I found Aparna that uh, if they have the inclination and they could do different tasks. Like there was somebody who I'd say, I'm going for client meetings. Do you want to come and man my office? And the phone's office was typically one room. And do you want to spend the time between when your child is not there answering my phones because I will be gone for client meetings? So it was, I was approaching people and I was asking them according to their skill sets. Oh, but I haven't done this before. Okay, so here's a script. This is how you speak. This is what you say. So there was a strong developer in me, which was willing to break it down. And I was not fussed about all their past experience, or I wasn't taking one dimension alone. I was taking a multiple dimensions, proximity, time availability. But what I didn't compromise on was integrity, sincerity, the willingness to learn, the willingness to work hard, the diligence, right? Now, those became the responsibility, the transparency, a little proactiveness. Now, those sort of, we early on, we knew what is it that we are really hiring for, what values, what qualities. And then organically, you will say, oh, okay, you're a techie. You want to do this? Why don't we just build a library system here? Okay. Maybe these quantitative, can we write a macro here and do these things? So you sort of just know what the other person could possibly bring, give them a nudge, give them the confidence and say, okay, we're doing this together. You're not alone. So you're also giving a lot of reassurance, because women with interrupted careers will also have compromised self-confidence, eroded sense of self-worth. So you are buttressing them up as leaders, as professionals again. So you play that role of a mentor. I can't say that I'm also guilty of being impatient at times, but I think they also learned that I was not attacking the person. I was attacking the task, or I was demanding a certain quality, like I'm a grammar Nazi, so I would sometimes, and we didn't have autocorrect and all of those things. We just had undo. But I would like, and if somebody was not learning, like, I corrected you twice, but if the mistake persists, then I could get a very sharp tongue. So I have had people melt into a pool of tears several times because I was demanding. Uh, Today, these people who are professionals in their own right thank me for it. I don't think they liked it very much at that time, or liked me very much at that time. But it was all keeping the project deliverable and the quality at the center that would make me be very demanding. And I always knew that if they brought a 70, I need to bring that 30. So you cannot just rely on what the team is bringing. So it calls for, I think, a huge ability to also work with a whole spectrum of people. So when you ask me, how did I change? I changed from saying that what I can demand of myself and may not be able to get from the other, primarily because they're not there either in experience or capability or what. they were not ready for it, and I also knew that what they brought probably I couldn't bring. So I was able to see the diversity and the force multiplier. I've used the word 3 times, but I really believe that it is 2 and 2 makes 5 if you can bring the right chemistry into a project team, which is what we have done time and again, project after project.
True. Thanks for breaking that part down because this is so. How would you advise students who are exploring the option for remote work? Do you think this can also bridge an urban rural gap?
It if it is if we can break down, it is a very systems approach, Aparna. It is design thinking after all. It is about being able to break the components of the part, but also build it up again, and then to see what are the supports that we need. You definitely needed process, you needed technology, you needed understanding the human psychology, you needed to understand training, skilling, you needed to understand how do you uh, do a what are the processes involved in that person being able to bring their best to what do they need to work together, what people need to work together. So in the years, the after the first 10 years or so, 8 to 10 years or so, it was me and maybe this one or two other people who comprised a project, and it was still a lot of it was very individual based. The need to move to cloud, the need to raise, bring even further capability to uh, do much more work happened as we when I say much more work, we did a lot of work, but we worked um see there is a whole dimension of attrition. So when let's say the person has moved, how do I quickly bring people up to steam? So you need to have a tremendous amount of agility and also the ability to manage a bench for some time. So there is going to be a learning curve. So knowing that when you are working with people remote or working anywhere else, there must be checks and balances. There needs to be ways of building accountability, and also what is your tolerance for that kind of margin of error that you can live with. Also, how can you anticipate? It starts with being able to fundamentally understand who am I, how do I work, how does this business work. So it's a lot of um, I think an acuity of and some amount of building that perspective, which doesn't come on day one, but it is also about trusting your instincts. It will know that sometimes you will fail, but if 2 times out of 100, if I have failed, then I don't, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater. You will say, this is where we probably got it wrong. Or this is what is that we probably did not anticipate. Today, with a lot of people post COVID, this phenomenon has been a lot of people have moved to their hometowns. They are working remote. Now, right now, I'm in the US. I see so many people who have moved their towns, and they've moved because both husband and wife are working remote. They have found a better community to work with or better weather to work. They probably have, they had some other aspirations that they are willing to uh, explore. Uh, so times have changed. Workplaces have got used to working with people remote. But how do you engage them beyond just a task? How do you get them to show them a path if that's what they want? And how do you make them um, feel that entrepreneurial spirit? Okay. Large organizations also need to do that. So, what is that entrepreneurial spirit? Nobody knows it better than an entrepreneur. So, when you have your teams working wherever they work, if you can fuel or you can connect with that entrepreneur in them, Uh, you can, you can, but be willing to train, be willing to demand, but be willing as much to be a servant leader because they will need the support at that point in time.
Exactly, exactly. So Deepa, we are veering towards the close. I have two or three more questions for you. Mm, just one related to what you said earlier about how Shark Tank is not our model. One quick question that stems from there. Mm, would you say that entrepreneurship education should look at mindset or should it look at venture creation?
I think it goes hand in hand, Aparna. I think it's very, you can't do one without the other. Again, this comes to the approach of the interconnectedness of things. The mindset will drive what are the yearnings of that entrepreneur in terms of what they want to do, and nothing is wrong with that. I've seen very uh, very focused uh, uh, towards profits and towards numbers. We have to bring them back to say that, what about the keeping a focus on quality, listening to the consumer's need, listening to what is the long arc of that one customer's need so you have a customer built for life. So those are, it's not just about the farming. How do you marry both
Right.
the uh, the getting of new customers alongside repeat business that you will get, and what drives that repeat business is a satisfied customer, how it will lead to positive word of mouth. So when I say mindset is also about resilience, about patience. Mindset is about the making that decision to do the right thing by the right, because that is what I understand and I can align with, right? And so the stuff that takes longer to do, stuff that is probably in the short term seems uh, why am I even doing this? But I think the being aligned with who you are and your values and being committed to doing that over the long run is what defines who I am. That satisfies my metric of success, which may be different from somebody else's metric of success. Yeah. So uh, if there is a certain impact definition, the impact definitions would be different for different people.
Right.
The ability to tell your story, the ability to believe in your story, the ability to for others to seeing you as authentically looking to add value and making a difference in some manner to whatever it is that you are looking to do. So the courage of conviction, and I think a relentless um, interest in your people, growing them uh, to do their best work. Yeah. So I think those are the mindset parts. Then, of course, is the whole skill set part of which is very, very important. How well do you understand what it is that you're doing? The idea. What is the? How does the landscape look like today? What are the adjacencies in terms of the competitors that are possible? Who is doing something that are so? Again, it comes from the quest, the curiosity, the openness to ask questions, to listen, to learn continuously, to be able to drop things that don't work. So rather than being fixated with something, being able to fail fast. Yeah.
Hmm. Right, right. So let's look at some interesting data again. The guest survey of 2023 threw up this one statistic. 38% of students report that they have started ventures. Okay. But we see that only 4.8 reach revenue stage. That means there's a massive execution gap, right? How do you think the ecosystem, not just incubators, how can the ecosystem help these students to actually walk the complete paths? Do you think we can simulate real world complexities? What do you think can be done in this?
one of the things that to have a to be successful, yeah, is really when you say the only 4.8% reach that path of taking something to market. A lot of times the um taking, being perfect on something. I think the curiosity to go out and actually try to put money to to fail. So of course you need some seed capital to go into that market. It's very uh, how will I, first of all, how well do I know my all my stakeholders? How well have I, what is the work have I done both in terms of working to build the product, working to know the consumer? How do I then look at the competitive context? All of that comes. And then knowing what is my pathway, how am I going to acquire these customers? How am I going to make a commercial venture out of it? So whether I am a home bakery, I have to go out there and I have to ideate and say, okay, how am I going to then put what Instagram content am I developing? So and who am I working? Who is doing what? Who is going to make these for me? Who is going to the initial investment that I need to get my kitchen up and going? Yeah. What is the kind of support I require to begin with? And then how long is it going to be for me to actually become, what is the kind of burn that I'm going to allow for some time? So the concept of burn is a very new concept, right? And for me, money is not about burning. We come from a culture where money is Lakshmi. You don't burn money. So what is the how can I be frugal in whatever I test? A lot of times the idea is to be very, very grand. And we've seen some startups with that, very massive investments. Why do you need? So those are the questions. And no, no, this is the bare minimum I require. We contest those to say, maybe you think there's a shame to say that I have only, 5 and not 75 of something. But that's the proof that I made. That's also being right by my investor to say, first, let me see how this works. And then, so I come from a philosophy which says that don't wait for something to be 100. Start with a 5 and then build it to 25. You will learn something in the journey of 0 to 5. You will learn something in the journey of 5 to 25. Then you move from 25 to 50 and then you move to 200. See, because we work with innovation pipelines of even large companies who have lots of investor money, I would say they are even more answerable to their shareholders. So I have seen them to be even more careful and conservative about getting this 0 to 5 and 5 to 25 right. And that is the part of doing the qualitative research, working with small samples, knowing yourself, knowing, how you and your uh, co-founders are going to work together, bringing that together, working very hard to understand beyond the idea the context in which and the relevance of this idea into the lives of people who are going to actually put their money where their mouth is. That part doesn't get taught, doesn't get understood. And that's the part where when we also work with like the startups, where people um, even to prioritize and say, okay, these are the three things I can do. How do I systematically go about and say, okay, what is the low hanging fruit? What is it? How does this align with who I really? And not all the answers, Aparna, one is going to have initially, but having that mindset of the curiosity to be patient and to do the hard work and the rigorous work it takes to test and try out. It's not just a and not everybody is cut for entrepreneurship, no? Even to know that, yes, this is something if I don't have a risk appetite, if I have sleepless nights, there is something that I'm compromising to my health. So it all starts with knowing self, which is why we actually work with the individual. As you know, we do the leadership coaching piece first for everybody in the team. Because to say, okay, how am I going to work? If everybody thinks I have to eat like this, but actually somebody should be eating like this, maybe let them. So it is very important to be realistic. So mindset as well as that ecosystem needs to understand that. I had somebody tell me, "Oh, my daughter is in class 9 and what does your daughter want to do?" No, we want her to become an entrepreneur. Hello. You parents cannot want child to become an entrepreneur. Uh, so that's as bad as saying, "Oh, I worked with the company 40 years. I don't even understand what you're doing with a successful, with this startup, what you call successful." So you have parents also at both ends of the spectrum that we have seen. And some who say, my God, we are doctors. This person has started this from his third year in his college, but we don't understand the thing. So actually, at that point in time, to say, who are the people that your child could even talk to? The professors, how do you make them build their own confidence? How do you skill them? So being afraid is natural for parents. But at the same time, how do you balance it out and say, okay, we've had someone who said, okay, my parents have given me a 3 years, but 3 years may not be enough. I mean, that person today, the two other people have continued in that venture, but the third person has opted out of it. Also because it's the appetite of, uh, what's the family context, what is that person expected to do, as do they, freedom is also a luxury in some cases economically also, if there are certain uh, dependencies. So it's also to not to say that therefore somebody succeeded and somebody failed. It's everybody's a path, unique. Everybody's entrepreneurial journey, as is anybody's life journey, is going to be very unique, and therefore it's very important to be secure and to co-opt people who believe in your idea and define what does success look like for you. If I am a very large conglomerate and I say every startup, I can only think of something which can be 100 crore idea, that maybe works well for them. But for somebody else, that's not their definition of success. Right?
The last question, Deepa. This is maybe something for students, policymakers, and educators. If you could launch a Guess India policy hackathon, what barrier would you ask students or policymakers or educators to solve?
I would definitely start that hackathon by helping the person understand themselves first. I would, find a way to say, okay, who am I? What is my natural operating system in terms of the way I think, feel, and behave? Okay. What is it that, and then being able to look at this part of understanding the self, which is very important, saying, okay, when I grow my business, am I going to be, do I have a mindset that only looks at revenue and customer? Is it something which is more developmental and therefore, what is the role that I will also play in my venture? Also, learning how do I tell my story, learning about consumer and customer and ways to observe, listen, and dialogue with customers. So, these become, I would say, like the alphabets of building your story. You will build your words, you will build your sentences, you will know where to punctuate, provided you know these things. If I have not learned it, I only understand some, um, only by practice. I have to take a long time, maybe 10, 15 years before I even discover these things by serendipity. Because otherwise, I'm never going to know. If my optimal style is through relationships, I must thrive on that. I must know what it means to nurture those relationships. It is very different from saying I will do networking. Nurturing is very different from networks are an outcome. They don't, young people today want to go and build networks. Those not they are, so sometimes mixing the how with the outcomes, so all of those things, so a very systems approach to understanding the domain as much as understanding the very critical ingredient in the success of that enterprise, which is the person, the human person, and their ability to work with other human persons who build that enterprise. I think that piece is completely absent. How do I, I know the science and the technology, but if I'm so comfortable in this thing of just getting a grant and doing more research and being very comfortable in that comfort zone. But oh, I don't understand that part of business. Oh, I don't understand marketing. Today we have no business to say, I don't understand this, I don't understand that. If you don't enjoy it, or if you feel you don't add value to it, work with someone who can. But uh, in today, and I don't think that that happens today, young people are, they want to know everything, but also to know what are the physical limits. How do I also balance and prioritize my health and well-being? Those are also very, very important, because a lot of times I could be, because I have taken some funding, I am completely at the mercy of, and doing 18-hour days, and I'm sleep compromised, and I'm surviving on coffee. And, so I think the sustainable entrepreneurship is also very important. When I mean sustainable from a health well point of view, and I think I would also prioritize that part very much. Relationships. I mean, uh, I have something which is successful at, um, but I just have a failed marriage now. That's impacting my life and my sense of well being. Now, how can I have a balanced approach? Not just scale is what I would really, really focus on, Aparna.
Right, right. Yes, that brings us to the end of this interview. Thank you so much, Deepa. And this has been insightful. You brought to this entire discussion an approach that included, obviously, all your experience as a practitioner, your research outlook, your learner outlook, and the mindset that you're talking about, the entrepreneurship mindset. I'm sure students who are listening to this will have a lot of takeaways for them to first and start looking at self discovery and the think, look, feel, that the operating system that you spoke about. So, thank you so much for putting all this and taking time out from your personal schedule on a holiday. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to the guest team also. And I think it's a fantastic resource that you are building. And I wish everybody the very best in whatever they want to do as they become on their journey to building their ventures and doing what it is that is their calling and their purpose for this world. So thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you.